G'day, welcome back. In this episode, we're going to have a look at fitting the rear suspension, leaf springs, and shocks. So let's get into it. Alright, so you'll have to excuse my bloody pink eye. I've got some kind of, because I've got a black eye, but some kind of infection in the eye there, so I apologise for that horrendous growth that's coming out of my eyeball. So yeah, it's been a while. I'm not going to make any excuses anymore. That's just unfortunately all I can do. So as I mentioned, I'm restoring a house, and that's just been taking its toll. On time, really. It's just such a massive undertaking. Anyway, so I've also been waiting for components to come in, and obviously finances to fund it all through COVID. So all those factors combined, yeah. So it's time to address the rear of the ute suspension-wise, and I know I mentioned, and I've gone through the options for suspension components. Have a look back on that episode where I go into more detail, but I've decided to go the old stock standard replacement gas shocks. Now these are by Webco's, and they fit for standard or lowered height. So I've got them, and they will be suffice. And I've also got fucking heavy. So these are I got these from Toowoomba Steering Suspension. That's amazing. You know, during COVID. You know, I've had tiny little things ordered from Melbourne that are clearly coming not from Melbourne, they're clearly coming from old Shenzhen. And they take 30 days. This from Toowoomba, 3 days on the doorstep in Victoria. So it's amazing. So you can get stuff down if they really use the right couriers. So anyway, this is a King's Super Low or Ultra Low. So it's around about a 50 mil drop, I think, which is still legal. But it's going to be low enough that, you know, you get a nice ride without having to then take everything off again for roadworthy. So I'm going to give it a go. Now they were a bit of a hit on price, $650. I could have used the old ones and maybe got them reset, but if you've looked into resetting, and I did go into this in the other video, you know, you're talking at $550 to reset springs. You probably could get it cheaper somewhere if you knew the suspension guy, but that's what I was quoted. So that's that. So another couple of things I wanted to touch on after the last video before the gas tank was the spindles from Rod Shop. Someone brought up a comment, and I didn't even think about this. I can't credit you because I can't remember who posted the comment, but these aren't treated as far as they're not stainless steel. They're just raw steel, so they do need to be painted before they're installed, otherwise they will eventually rust. So I installed one already without painting it, so I'm going to have to paint in situ, but this one I will actually paint with the same caliper paint of the that I used on the brake calipers. That's something to be mindful of if you're going to buy some. The calipers I also mentioned last time. I ordered some for the calipers. I also ordered some new boots and a little guide pin. Anyway, it's a different style, but I was assured that it is the same guide pin and it will fit in the hole. So I've tried it out, and the boots are nice and new, so they do seal. In the hole pretty, I mean, there's a bit of play in there, so I'm gonna have to check that out. But yeah, once you seal the boot in, so now that's really sealed in nicely, so no dust can get in there. So I'm gonna replace all the boots on those. Also did, as you're probably aware, put the caliper on the wrong side when I was assembling that one, so I'd have to swap it around. As I mentioned, I want to get a 308 ratio for that diff. Mine's a 355 ratio. It's like buying a needle in a haystack. You can get them, but they're pretty rare these days. So I'm going to send it to a diff place to actually get done. Because I remember I had to disassemble that diff on the on the BS ute, and it was bloody hard. You got the pinion bearings, all that kind of stuff are very sensitive. You've got to get it right, and it was all right for the shitbox rally because I didn't particularly care if it didn't last after 10,000 Ks, but for something like this, you want to make sure that it's good. So for $200 or $300, just pay a diff guy to do it. And Bob's your uncle, as they say. So, but I've just got to find that ratio. Then I'll send it into Fluid Drive and Bendigo. I think I spoke to them. They're quite happy to swap it over. But I need a bloody ratio. I was talking to some guy who was going to do a swap, but during COVID, it didn't work out. So if anyone's got a 308 ratio, they want to swap for 355, let me know in the Bendigo or Central Victoria region. And we'll do a bit of a deal because, that's holding things up at the moment. So anyway, I'm just going to kick into it. I'll probably start with, assembling the front end and then talk you over the componentry for the rear end. I'm going to start with the spindle. So that's the installed spindle, which needs to be treated. So I'm going to treat it in place because I don't particularly want to then take it all apart again. So yeah, I'll just tape up the areas that I don't want to get paint on and give it a bit of a clean and a spray with the caliper paint. And that'll be done, and the other one's down here, so I will tape up all this section here so that no paint gets on it. That's going to be greased and running around, so you don't want anything on that, but the rest is good to go, so I'll do the same with that. All right, so they're painted. Bit dusty. Done. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to move on. Okay, so now I've assembled both sides of the front end minus the gas shock on the driver's side, so I've got to do that. But I've still got to put in the other components. So yeah, power steering unit, steering assembly, tie rod ends, sway bar, new sway bar bushes. So they need to go in next. And then after that, we're going over to the rear. So we've bought some new U-bolts, got some new bushes for the leaf springs, repainted plates, the bump stops, U-bolt plates. These shackles I still need to spray. Even though they got pitting in them, I've been told they're all right to reuse. And then, I've got the diff here, which I still need to refurbish. And this has been holding me up, this diff. So, because I'm just going to stick with the 355 for now, which is inside it. I'm just going to recondition it, repaint it, and then get it on and mounted so I can mount the leaf springs and get the chassis rolling. And look, if I need to, I'll change the internals down the track. So yeah, U-bolts $100, $45 for those. Tie rod ends probably 60. Bushes for the leaf springs came in about that again. So all adds up, but it's all there. Yeah, now it's just time to get it on. So let's do it. Revisiting these Gerlock brake calipers, and I was waiting for these components to come in. So the new rubber boots and one of these guide pins. So I've put a new guide pin already, a new boot in this one, and from what I can see, it was exactly the same style as this. So this is an older one. So I've just put a bit of high temperature grease in there. Yeah, the old one's just weak. It's lost its strength. So the new one should just click in place. Just going to snap it in. And you can see with that new boot, that audible click there means that it's locked in now. So before it wasn't doing that. So now if you pull it back up, it's taking that boot with it. So it's nice and sealed there as well. So you know there's not going to be any dirt and things coming in, which was what was happening before, and that's why it wore out. So I'm going to just assemble these and make sure that they're all done. And then I'm going to install them on the right sides of each of the hubs. So both brake calipers are now on the right sides. Shockers are on. I had to air gun this nut because I couldn't get the purchase. This shock kept spinning, so someone told me use an air gun, and the hammer and rattle effect gets it down. So that secured that. The same with this one. Only issue is underneath here. It's a real bitch. I was doing up these nuts here, and obviously reusing the originals, and this one snapped off just as I was just about to thought, I'll just give it one last turn and snap. So it's stuck in there now, and I don't know how to get it out. I'm sure there's techniques. If anyone knows, please let me know, because I'm going to have to revisit that. but for now, I'm going to move on. All right, so next in line, now that those calipers are on, I'm going to install the steering rack with the power steering unit here. So without further ado, let's just get it on. All right, so the steering arms are on with new bolts on each side. Our power steering unit's on, stabilising brackets on, and the other side's on as well. So now it's on with the sway bar. White line sway bar mounts, brand new, and the repainted sway bar mount cover. So let's get it on. I just realised that I'd put the sway bar upside down, and when I went to do the tie rods, they wouldn't fit. So, yep, flipped it upside down, undid it all, and flipped it upside down. Pain in the ass, but I did it. So that's the front end. I've just put the wheels on. I haven't bolted them in, but yeah, they're sitting there. Everything is looking new and clean, and very happy with it. I've just put the old dragways back on, which are such a classic looking wheel. You know, I'm in two minds to whether to keep them or not, to be honest. But the only reason I would get rid of them is they are pretty worn out, you know. The chrome's coming off, so they would need to be re-chromed, and flaking centre caps and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to get new ones. I like the white writing on the tyre. It's just a classic look. And to be honest, more rubber on these cars looks better than more rim, I reckon. So originally I was going to go the 17s, and I'm still thinking about it. But there's something to be said for the 15s as well, and they still look like a great tyre and wheel combo. So now that is assembled, I'm going to move along to the diff, which is a big job. Okay, so here's the diff. As I mentioned before, 355 ratio, 10 bolt Salisbury. And I know a lot of people were saying just get a 9-inch or get something that's a little bit stronger. From my research, these 10 bolts are still rated up to around about 600 horsepower or something like that. So yeah, they're not exactly useless. And this unit will probably have, I would imagine, 390, maybe 400 if I do a little bit more to it. But yeah, I don't want much more power than that at this stage. Once again, this is my first build, so I don't want to have something that's ridiculous power-wise and, you know, write it off in the first week. So what I've got to do before I can assemble it, what I'm going to do is just clean it up, give it a repaint, take the lines off, take the wheels off, the drum brakes and things, just give it a paint, clean it up so that I can assemble it, because I probably will have to take it out again, which is an absolute pain. But what I was thinking when I do find the ratio, and a lot of people will be saying we should have just done this before, but things take time. In the event of not getting this video out, I just want to get it reconditioned. This was a good diff, and I can just put it back in, no dramas at all, the way it is. But I was thinking when they get the ratio, I'll take it down to the guys in Fluid Drive and Bendigo, get them to take it apart, put the new ratio in, and give it a good clean up. And if they need to change the pinion bearings and all that kind of stuff, then they can do it at that stage. But at this stage, I'm just going to clean her up and put it back in. sprayed. I just did a etch prime and then the same KBS chassis coater as I applied on the chassis. So yeah, and yeah, gave it 3 light coats in the end. And I did rust treat it. I forgot to actually record it, but I did rust treat or rust convert. Really happy with the way that's being cleaned up properly and put on. Gasket's still intact. I think I may have threaded a bolt in there as well with one of the nuts, which is just a nightmare. So for right now, I'm not even thinking about that, but I'm just going to get this down, put the other wheel on it, which is over here, wheel it around to the chassis, and yeah, it starts to assemble the leaf springs, U-bolts, and all the other good gear that goes with this, and get a rolling chassis going. So I'd get my mug back on the screen. So I'm finally up to leaf springs. I've got the different stuff in position, and it's come time to put the bushing or the bushes inside the leaf spring. And as per usual, it's not easy. You usually need a press of some description to fit these in because they are quite a hard fix. So in the spirit of DIY, I've got a workaround that you can do with some basic equipment at home, and I'll show you now. So what do you need? Well, you need a leaf spring. You need a bush, you need a 19mm, 2 19mm spanners, a socket spanner and just a normal spanner, some grease, an upside down dog blanket, and some mild steel 19mm rod, a 30mm socket on one end, and a 22mm socket on the other end, 2 nuts, 2 washers. Dog blanket is optional. You've probably seen this before. It's a bit of a common way of removing and pushing in bushes. And yeah, I'll just set it up and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so you've got the 19mm mild steel rod. I would prefer to use high tensile. I couldn't find any, but if you could get some high tensile rod, that would be even better. However, I've already installed one using this and it worked fine. So yeah, 19mm rod, then you've got a 19mm nut, washer, make sure that the arbor is small enough, and then you've got your 30mm socket, which will allow the other end to poke out, although it doesn't even need to poke out that far when you're installing them. Then you have to insert this through the eye of the leaf spring, and then get your, well, actually before you do that, get some grease. Just line the inside of the bushing or the bushing hole, just so that it doesn't grip as much. Then, yeah, I place that in, the rod through, bushes on the other side. Then a 22mm socket on the other side, which is just enough to rest on that lip of the steel on the bush. Then grab a washer on the other side, and then your 19mm nut will be the one that you use to tension and push. So finger tighten it until it's lined up. The beauty about having that rod in the middle is it holds it in place to a certain extent anyway. When you're doing it in a vise or a press, you've got to be mindful that this bush doesn't flick off when you're under pressure, because there's quite a considerable amount of force required to push this in. I don't know how much, but it'd have to be in the hundreds of kilos. So yeah, just be mindful of that. But the beauty of this rod is the fact that it's, well, you don't need to buy a $300 press, and these materials cost me $10 at the local steel shop. Just go down there and get what you need. So anyway, that's ready, jerry-rigged and ready to go. So all I did is to just locked one off. I just made sure that I've got a 19mm spanner there, or a socket already connected on that nut so it doesn't turn. And then, yeah, I just started tightening it up. And that's it. So basically that's starting to go in, and you can just do it all the way. Keep tightening this nut. This will locked off. I've just got this rag here to stop that slipping off. I'll keep tightening that until it goes all the way in, and then you're done. One thing I failed to mention is making it stable. So I've just put a couple of Irwin quick grips up the end there, just to bolt it onto the table, hold it on. And that was more than enough to make it stable while I turned it. It needs considerable force to do it you know, so the more leverage you can get with your body strength, the better. And I was using a breaker bar, it'd be great. I was just using this, and it was, you know, I was pushing that hard that I needed to actually cushion my hand from the metal. So, and that's it. That's how you do a leaf spring bush at home. Yeah, just keep it even on each side and as much as possible. But yeah, that's done, and I've done the other ones, so they're good to go and install. So I'm going to move over to back over to here and start putting it all together. Okay, so first thing to install is the bump stops, rear bump stops. Now, I unfortunately lost the bolts that were going into the chassis, so I've had to go and get new ones, and that's off the, that was actually off the front end, the brake caliper lines, the brake lines going into the chassis. So I tried it and it did fit. So anyway, I went to my local metal guy, and he's given me these, which have been on them, but they do screw in. So once again, it's important to label. That's my first real sort of loss of the original nuts. I know you can get them all again, but it's just painful when you have to go and source things on the fly. You just want to get it installed. So anyway, yeah, make sure you label everything, because I'm going to start finding this happening more than not with a few things that I haven't labelled properly. Anyway, so I'm going to install these now, and then we'll move on to the U-bolts. I had to take the night off and come back today because I was having some dramas with this fitting these leaf springs. So I thought I'd do one side first, and then and then film the other side just so I can get it right. So I'll basically talk you through what's been going on with it and the issues that I've found and the mistakes I've made so far. All right, so yes, basically I've got the leaf spring connected. Got a couple of clamps there. The U-bolts are in position, but what I'm going to do, they're actually too long. I just got a standard size. I didn't actually think about the lowering, so I'm going to have to cut them because they stick down way too far, but I'm just getting fitment first. When you get these leaf springs, they I'm obviously a complete novice with this kind of stuff, so it didn't have a front or back indicator as to which way they go. So they did come fitted with some urethane bushes at the front. And so I got confused, and I've already popped in those, as you know, those steel and rubber bushes on the other end into this shackle. So it does fit, but rubbers are supposed to go in there, these rubbers. So they go in one there and then one the other side. But I don't know if it does say front or back. So it's essentially a rubber. It's the same as the front. In fact, I think it'd be stronger than using those anyway. The only issue is it may be a noisier ride. Anyway, I'm not going to pop them out because it's such an effort to get them in, and they fit with this shackle anyway. So I'm going to leave them. I've still got the rubbers at the top here. So this one's already mounted, so you can see it fits through. I've got the rubbers on this top section here, and yeah, it's working. So I'm going to leave it, and I'll let the power of YouTube and the feedback from the community let me know if that's going to be suffice or whether I need to actually change it back. So, and yeah, the other urethane bushes fit in nicely into this section here. And make sure you put these stickers at the rear, because the distance from the center positioning bolt is about 79 centimeters on the rear, and from that center point on the front, 63 centimeters. So if you get them around the wrong way, which I did, this shock doesn't line up with this U-bolt plate here, so it's miles behind. You know, classic novice mistake probably for anyone that's done it before, but when you've got no one to tell you these things, you've got to learn the hard way. Just going to also trim these before I install them, because I think once you put them in, trying to actually cut them in situ is going to be a nightmare. So I just cut the U-bolts with the Metal X blade and tied it up the ends so the nuts go back on. They're a good height now, so now I'll fit them on and bolt it up. I've just had a massive hurdle with the U-bolts, just bad luck or bad suppliers. So this U-bolt here, U-bolt 75mm 260 by long by 12, which is what, or 70mm, which is what I want for this diff. This is 85. The other two are 70, and this is 85. So they've put 2 different U-bolts in packaging that actually says 75. TFI Racing, shit house. I'm gonna have to put them on for now just so I can get the video out. We're gonna have to replace them, and otherwise it's gonna be rattling around and be hopeless. All right, so I've got those, I just compressed those in the vise just to get them in for now until I can get the other ones sent. Hopefully they do. All right, so that's it. Now I've got to do the last little thing, and that's the middle bump stop just above the diff. So I've used the original, just bolted in, resprayed that. And got the 3 original nuts and bolts here. So I'll just install that and then we're done. Well, there we have it. We have a rolling chassis. And it's looking pretty good. It's sitting pretty good too. Front seems to be low. Seems to be quite low, but not too low. I guess you'll find out once you put the panels on. But yeah, I think those drop spindles are doing a good job. It's looking clean as, even with those wheels, you know, the dragways. Looking good. So the old leaf springs here, you know, it's definitely a firmer ride, but it's not a squeak. I remember last time with those shocks and the leaf springs, it was just a squeaky, rattly piece of work, but it's tight as a drum, and I think it'll just handle so much better. So that is a wrap. That is a rolling chassis, so I can start rolling it around. And yeah, it's all up from here. Very happy. It's taken a long time, but it's worth doing it properly. So now I'm going to, probably jump onto the body and do some body work just to spice things up a bit. So I've got my a couple of new tools that I'll be using for that, for the upcoming episode, and yeah, we'll get into it. But for now, that is it. All right, let's pull up my new chassis seat. So I'm going to use this opportunity to introduce the first episode for 2021 of Project Spotlight. So as I mentioned last episode, I was going to do a Project Spotlight to showcase anyone else that's doing a build out there that would like to give us an update and show the rest of the community what you're doing, because sometimes it can fire you up to keep going when things get a bit monotonous. So yeah, as I said, I asked people to send me some details through, and I think it was about 7 responses. I was going to do a couple in each episode, but because it's going to take a bit of time, I thought I'd just do one. So for the first one, I've decided to do Aaron Barnett's story, and he's actually over the pond in New Zealand, and his ute is a 1978 HZ Holden ute. And I'll just read his story here, and as I'm doing it, I'll show you some photos. So he sent me this blurb. My story starts in 2017 in sunny Nelson, New Zealand. I swapped a 1995 Toyota Hilux Surf for my 1978 HZ Holden ute. The Holden ute was a bright orange colour, had an average V8 engine replacement, steel heads, Gilmore drive, which sounded really cool, turbo 400 trans and standard LSD diff. He used to go to a few car shows in New Zealand, but after a while it was proving to be more trouble than it was worth with breakdowns, etc. He decided to do a full ground-up restoration with little to no automotive experience, like myself. And here's what he's done. So I'll read a list of what he's done. So he stripped the ute down to a rolling body on the chassis, had the motor rebuilt, new windscreen and back window, all new wiring in engine bay, new radiator, had the trans rebuilt, not by him, you got someone else to do it, standard LSD diff still. We'll see about after it's running. New upholstered bench seat, carpet, door cards, all new rubbers, 3-inch reverse cow scoop. Rebuilt all the brakes, pistons, pads, had the calipers powder coated, lots of little things like new bolts, hoses, 2500 high stalls converter, flex plate battery mounts, new headlights, grills. The motor is a small block Chevy V8, forged pistons, AFR heads, roller rockers, 650 Holly double pumper. I've been told I should get over 400 horsepower, so looking forward to the startup. Still things to do, it's a work in progress. He then finishes off saying, thanks for the opportunity to be in one of your vids. I look forward to the next video and I'll keep you updated on my build. So yeah, thanks for sending it through, Aaron. As you can see, it's a pretty tough looking ute. I love that colour and I've been thinking about doing something similar with this build. But yeah, once again, I love the stories behind these old cars. You know, there's some real passion involved, whether it's in New Zealand, Indonesia or Australia. I find that those three countries have got Holdens in them. I've got a few people contact me from Indonesia that follow the series, and they've built up in their garage a HZ ute. If anyone else has a build that you want to showcase, send them through at the email address is sales@kuiper.com.au. That's it for this episode. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Follow the series from the start, and hopefully we'll see you next time.